Hey everyone, welcome to Frequently Asked Fridays, episode 11. I'm Connor and I'm joined by Mitesh.
Hi Connor, how are you? Hi everybody.
Very good. And today we're going to be talking about network security groups, NSGs in Azure, why you should use them, and how they can best benefit your Azure environment. We're also going to be touching on password protection as well with an Entra ID and how you can get the most out of that as well. So yeah, let's start with the network security groups. Mitesh, do you want us to talk through a little bit like what an NSG is and how you should be using them?
Yeah, okay. So, this came from a question from one of our customers. We were just reviewing all the security on their side. They've had a third-party review as well. So there's just some questions on understanding what they actually do. So to start with, an NSG, which is a network security group, is you can think of it as a set of firewall rules or a rule set. And those firewall rules, ideally, you would for ease of management, you would apply them to a subnet. You can apply them to individual NICs of, let's say, a private endpoint or a virtual machine network adapter, but it's a lot easier to design and manage if you assign them to a subnet. And what they do is it's kind of it operates at the what do they call it, OSI transport layer 4, which means it can understand source, destination, ports, and protocols as well, right? So you can have rules in there. Say you can have a number of rules, so they all have a priority as well. So the lowest number you can start with is 100, and so the lowest number gets enumerated first. And what happens is you go through the rule sets, and whenever a rule is matched, that rule will take effect, and no more rules will get checked after that. So, for example, let's say you have a management server in a virtual network, and their NIC is in a management server subnet, and you want to allow access, let's say from Azure Bastion, you would have a rule. You'd have an NSG, which is the object that groups all the rules, and you would have a rule in there to allow RDP, which is the protocol, port 3389 if you're using the default, allow from the source, which is the Bastion IP or the Bastion subnet, and the destination would be the destination where your NIC is that you want to connect to. There's a few other things for Bastion, such as read access to Bastion and things like that. But in essence, that's what a rule might look like, and I can probably flash one up on the screen. So that's kind of the basics of an NSG with one rule in it. They do have some default rules in there by default, which is allow all virtual network traffic. So anything in your network can talk to each other or any other network that's peered to it, including your VPN traffic as well. So you can further restrict that by putting kind of intra subnet rules. So you can have rules in there that says, okay, subnet 2 and 3 can talk to each other, but 4 and 5 can't, for example. And you should kind of think about those kind of rule sets as well when you're setting up and designing your network. So that's one element of the NSGs.
Yeah, and so, obviously, if a lot of folks these days, were, they're going to have a firewall in their environment as well.
Yeah.
If we were using these in conjunction with a firewall, why should I use an NSG alongside a firewall? Shouldn't I put all my rows in a firewall instead?
Yeah, you could use everything in the firewall and not assign NSGs, but one of the Microsoft recommendations is to have the NSGs, and then so you might not filter them down as much, but you'd still have some level of filtering, and then all the fine details go into your firewall rule set. So your network rules, as they're called in the Azure firewall, and what they call that scenario is defense in depth. So you're going to have to get through one firewall first and then get enumerated on the Azure firewall. So the Azure firewall, you might want to use that because it uses layer 7, and layer 7 means that it can actually inspect all the traffic. It can see the URLs that's going out as well, or coming in if you need to publish anything. You can have a lot more advanced and clever rules at a layer 7 level because it's the application layer, rather than level 4. So level 4 is just kind of your basic network protocols, ports, as I mentioned, and then your layer 7 we can look at the actual traffic and the URLs and do a lot more clever stuff at that level. So yeah, on our secure environments, we generally have an NSG rule base. And then all the traffic actually goes via the Azure firewall. So to put that into a bit of context, you may have two spoke networks, or an on-prem network that needs to get access to something in one of the other spokes, for example, that traffic would flow through the Azure firewall and into the spoke based on the rules that's allowed to do. Now, anything in that spoke network wants to get to another spoke or anything on-prem, it would have something called a user-defined route in a route table that says anything destined for this IP range, and that could be you could have define a whole spoke, for example, as a range, and anything that hits that matches that rule, send that traffic to the Azure firewall. So don't go there directly or don't try to. Hit the firewall first. The firewall will do all the rules and the inspection, and then that traffic will then get sent to the destination if it's allowed, with all the advanced filtering that you can have on the Azure firewall as well.
No, that sounds really good, Mitesh. So if I was publishing like a application in Azure and I wanted to protect it that way, we've talked about NSGs, we've talked about firewalls. Is there something else then I could use, or would I be using one of these two?
Yeah, so if you're publishing, so let's say if you're publishing a web service, and that could be like a container or as your web app, or even something running inside a VM, you could use an inbound. So you wouldn't necessarily use an Azure firewall to inspect that inbound traffic from the internet. You could do, but the right way to do that is to use either an Azure front door with WAF policies or an Azure application gateway, and that gateway would then act as the entry point for that traffic coming into your application that sits inside your network. What happens with that is again it's a layer 7 network packet inspection. So it will look at the traffic, look at the URLs, and inspect where it's coming from, where it's going to, and allow it through based on that. But then you can also have other rules. So there's a set of built-in rules called the OWASP rule set, and that looks for things like that might be malicious. So you could have URLs that have been tampered with. You could have something that somebody's trying to do a SQL injection attack on your web services, and what the WAF will do is will look for that kind of behavior and block it, or report it or block it. Depending on the settings that you specify, and then it will have all that logging and inspection on the inbound. It will also do things like SSL termination and those kind of things as well, and routing the traffic to the right place, health checks, probes, and those kind of things. So an application gateway slash as your front door is a good way to protect your incoming web traffic requests.
And you mentioned one of the kind of role sets there you can have in the application gateway WAFs. Some of those are kind of managed by Microsoft as well in terms of like the
Yeah.
malicious, sites or links or like, traffic coming in. So you're not having to manage that stuff yourself, are you, as much?
Correct. No. So there's sites and specific categories which you can do for outbound traffic on the Azure firewall. So let's say you've got a bunch of VMs and they want to talk to the internet, you could restrict what they can connect to over the internet. So you could say, I want to restrict access to, I don't know, social media, shopping sites, gambling sites. You can do it by category for your outbound internet connections, but for your inbound, you would use the kind of the OWASP rule set, and I think it's called CSR or CRS 3.1 at the moment, which is the latest set. There's about 1 or 200 rules in there that check what they're doing is checking the URLs that's coming into your web services, and checking if it's anybody's trying to inject malicious code or try something naughty to attack your web service, and that's kind of what that application gateway and the WAF policies for the front door do. So I know you've had a busy week this week as well, and last week. So yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've been working on?
Yeah, so touching on kind of did a review of a customer's environment, going through their intra,
Mm.
just making sure everything's set up correctly and as it should be, and they're utilizing as much of the sort of Microsoft suite in Entra as possible, because there are a lot of options in there, and I think they oftentimes go amiss. We think about the big ones like conditional access, MFA, all of these kind of things. There's a lot of like maybe smaller equipment, fairly useful and powerful tools in there as well to use. And one of those I want to talk about today is talking about the password protection within Entra. So
Cool.
looking at this, kind of we'll start looking at like a global banned password list that's under this password protection. And this is something you get automatically if you're using Entra ID, if you're a cloud user, you will sort of essentially get this global banned password list that Microsoft manages applied to your tenant. So if you have a cloud user that is logging in and they try and enter a password that is password 123, that's going to get
Mm.
rejected and they're going to get told to enter something else. Um, so that's a really
Can we
nice
add our
feature.
own?
So yeah, that is obviously a really nice feature for those big generic ones. But obviously there's still kind of attack vectors there with passwords that could be fairly weak when they're perhaps specific for your company, right? So it could be like a company name. Maybe you probably don't want anyone using your
Yeah.
company name as a password, or
Mm.
maybe your head office name or street name, or any of these things that are more specific to your organization.
Okay.
And then you can use a
Mm.
custom banned password list. And so Microsoft allows you then to enter your own banned words that you don't want anyone using for a password. And in there's a really nice feature that there's sort of a matching feature that Microsoft gives. So, for example, if you just enter your company name or street name, whatever word it is you want to ban in plain text, it will then go out there and essentially match any attempts to, go around that. So, for example, if I was saying I want to ban the word, if I want to ban LANet, right, as a password, I can just enter that in there. But if someone comes along and says, all right, I'm going to do, L4,
Yeah.
N3T, that's also going to get banned. Microsoft's going to notice that and go,
Excellent.
cool, that looks exactly like LANet. I know what you're trying to do.
Mm.
And it's also going to restrict
Mm.
and ban that
Mm.
as well, which is a
Okay,
really,
good.
really nice feature.
And is that free? Is that built into the thing, or do you need specific licenses for that?
So for the global banned password list, that is free. Everyone who is a cloud user on Entra ID
Yeah.
gets that. For the
Okay.
custom banned password list, you do need, I believe, a P1 or P2 license. Will get you that.
Okay.
And then obviously you probably heard me speaking a lot about cloud users, right? Because by default, this is
Yeah.
who gets this on Entra
Yes.
is cloud only users. But if you're a
Yeah.
company that's in a hybrid scenario with an AD on site that you're syncing to Entra, by default, those on domain accounts don't get access to any of this banned password list to the global
Mm.
or the
Mm.
custom. However, there is quite a nice feature, and I think this again goes fairly underutilized.
Yeah.
It's not something I'd known about until somewhat recently, which is you can actually set this up to sync back to your domain AD meta directory
Nice.
service and get the benefit of both the global password list, global banned password list, and your own custom banned password list. So there is some architecture that needs set up there. So you do need to put some agents on your AD machines, and you also do need to be running a couple sort of proxy servers in between your AD and the
Right.
intra ID, as
Okay.
essentially to act as like a passenger for to talk to your AD services and in the internet. You don't necessarily want to be opening your AD servers straight up to the internet, because obviously you're going to
Mhm.
need to do that to communicate. So having this proxy in place, helps you keep secure in that way. So there's a bit of work for it, but I think given the sort of scope and how powerful, like even just that global banned password list is, so now none of
Yeah.
your users can be, setting their password as password or any of the other countless, bad passwords we see on those, 100 worst password lists that appear every now and again. I think that's a super powerful tool to just really protect
Yeah.
and know the
Really
organization
good.
is going to be safe and not utilizing any of those bad passwords.
Brilliant. No, I like that. I remember seeing that a long time ago, and then yeah, completely forgot about that because nobody really talks about that so much. I don't really hear much about it, but yeah, it's a really good thing. And I know the customer you were showing last week really like the idea of that as well. Especially using the custom ones on their on-prem domain as well. That was really good.
And so that's our video for today, discussing NSGs, firewalls, as well as application gateway WAFs, and just securing your environment using all of the tools available to you in Azure, as well as touching on password protection and how you can use it and to sort of not forget about it hidden in there in Entra ID. So yeah, make sure you like and subscribe. Any comments you'd have, please leave them below. Any questions you've got, and what we discussed today or anything else in Azure, please reach out to us either below in the comments, or you can even reach out to us on LinkedIn using the QR code on screen. And if you, again, want any help from us in your Azure environment, then please reach out to us at lanet.co.uk. You can there book a free consultation to chat with us about your environment and your cloud journey. So yeah, thank you, Mitesh, for joining us.
Thank you, Connor. I just wanted to say we have got a new website coming up as well, so that should be live in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and I'll hopefully see you next time.